Why, hello, hello. Thanks for tuning in today for the event in a land bar, bar away. Aptly named by one of our lovely attendees, Jude. Thank you, Jude, for that. I loved it. I thought it was so funny. Anyway, if you don't know me, my name is Carol and I run the Social Canvas. These are paint and sip online events right now, but we will be going to our public venues very soon. But we will continue, or I will continue to do the online events, so that's great news. Generally, I do one once a week, sometimes more, but it's good to look at the website at www.thesocialcanvas.co.uk and you will see all the ones that we're doing outside and inside. So I hope you enjoy. I teach a step-by-step process, so I try and run at a pace where you can carry along easily. And I'll go through all the things that you need before we start. I have my lovely cup of tea here today. I'm not drinking anything else, but sometimes I drink a glass of wine or sometimes a gin and tonic. But, you know, that's the whole thing. We're relaxing and we're enjoying our painting. So let me show you what you need. I have a 16 by 12 canvas. This is done on a very small canvas paper, but, you know, we're going to make it bigger. I have obviously a table easel here that I'm using today. Pot of water, because we're using acrylic, which are water-based paints. I have quite a good amount of white, small amount, very tiny amount of yellow and red, some green and some blue. Now, you can use any tones of those that you wish, because quite honestly, this paint has got different tones of greens in anyway. So it's really up to you which ones you use. But we're going to start with sort of a wash background, which is kind of a hazy tone meadow here at the moment. That's what we're going with anyway. So it's sort of, you know, early morning maybe, and sun is just rising and the mist is just disappearing away. And, oh, I forgot to tell you, I do have a little bit of black for my lovely sheet too. You can put that out at any time you like, though. I'll try not to get my head in the way. I've got the camera quite high up here, but so that you can see. But I do sometimes stick my head in the way. I'm so sorry. Anyway, so let's get going and enjoy. Oh, forgot to run through the brushes, but any brushes that you have will do. I'm sure they will work just as well, but I'm going to run through a various amount that I have here. I always use an angled brush, which is this one here. It's a number 6 or 8, actually, I'm not sure. It's got so much paint on it, I can't see anymore. Also known as a chisel brush. I've got a small round, which is called a filbert brush here, which is a long-handled brush. And again, number 6, this one. And a small angle brush, which is a number 4, I believe. I might be wrong. I got a small square one. Sometimes I use that, sometimes I don't. Very short square angled one, and a very small one for detailed work, so fine detailed work like the sheep there. And a smaller or a bigger round brush, which is a number 6, that I sometimes use as well. So obviously this is done on a much smaller scale, so I'm going to need a slightly bigger one. So let's start. Cup of tea first, and we'll carry on. Okay, so I'm going to use my biggest one first. Did forget to mention that you need some amount of kitchen towel for blotting. So I like to not dip my brush in my tea, so I'm just moving that to the side. It's quite possible I'll do that. But I'm going to wet my brush first of all. I'm going to take some white to the side. I'm going to try and hold this up so you can see here. I'm trying to make some subtle shades of blue, pink, yellow, sort of a different mix here. So I'm going to start with a little bit of yellow and orange. So I'm just going to grab a very tiny corner of yellow. Again, it's a very small amount. I'm just going to stick a little bit of that in the middle here. May get a little bit more yellow, but it doesn't matter how you put this down, so don't worry too much about the strokes. We're just going to shove a little bit in the middle there, like so. Oops. Don't rub any yellow that I've got too much of. Just bring that up there a little bit, like so. That's going to be my line for my hills there. So I'm going to just spread that sort of pale yellow over here a little bit and bring it right up, because again I'm going to grab a lot more white with that too, because what I'm going to do while it's still a little bit wet, I'm going to push that in a little bit, is add a tiny bit of red. When I say tiny, basically I mean tiny. See how small that is? It's gone just a little bit peachy. And I'm going to, it's always good to start slow and then you can layer up afterwards. Make it stronger, deeper colour as you wish. So this is where you can make it your own by adding the elements and the colours how you like them. So you don't have to follow exactly my lead, but I'm just showing you how to sort of blend a misty look, but you can change the order of colours around if you wish. So that's going to need a little bit more of a orangey tone, so I'm just getting a little bit more yellow and red together to get a bit more orangey tone, see? Always start slow with your colours and build them up. And I'm just getting what's left up in my brush there off my brush. So I don't want that sitting up there because it builds up the brush and then it's just nasty to use and it splays the bristles out, so you don't really want that happening. You can go round to the edges if you wish, but try and remember to do it as you're going around, of course, with that colour. Definitely a good suggestion there. Try and use different brush strokes, as in, like, instead of going up and down straight across, try and go up and down and across and sideways and whatnot, just to change the tone of the colour rather than have it all splodged in one place. I've just added a little bit more red in there. Look, I just wanted a little bit more tone red. It's sitting a bit higher on this one actually. Just softly, again, I'm just using the side of my brush to soften it up a bit. Make sure you've got enough water and paint. And then if you want to go back in, at any stage you can soften it with just putting a little bit of white back in with those colours. That will soften it and make it more of a misty look. So I've just gone back and grabbed a little bit more white. So at any point you can tone it down, whatever. So I've got a little bit more pink over this side than I have red. So you could either wipe your brush off like that, get most of that off. It will still be there, so you could dip it in your water and just try and get a lot of it off, a little bit there. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of red to one side with some white. I want a very soft, again, a very soft pink, slightly different shade over here. This might come out dark, but that's actually all right. So again, you can overlap that a little bit into your yellow if you wish. That's all right. Just make that very soft. Just make sure you've got enough paint on that you're covering your canvas. Which I don't, so I have to add a little bit more. It's an easier one to make up as you go along, honestly, rather than have to make a huge batch of it and waste it. If you've been here before, you know me, I don't like wasting paint. So, and if I've got lots left on my palette, I always try and, of course you can't squeeze it back in a tube easily, but if you've got a pot, like these little pots that I use, It's easy, just take the lid off and put it back in with a clean brush. So you can use it again another time. Indeed, indeed. If you want to, also, I like to sort of marry up areas by putting, let's say, a little bit of that pink. I might just put a little area of pink in there like that, just a little one, so that it's kind of like bringing those two together in some way. So if you can find a little space to do that somehow. Again, I put plenty of white in with it so that it's quite misty. Until you've got it how you like it. Stand back and see. Of course, I know you won't perhaps tell until you've got the other elements in there, like the trees, but okay, I think that's pretty good. I think that's enough. You may add a little bit more yellow back in the middle, just a bit brighter tone maybe in there, just a little bit. When you go up to your blue, you're going to have to be careful with the yellow because it will go green if you put too much in, or overlap it too much, I should say. And we don't really want a green sky. That's kind of not cool. Okay, so I am going to wipe my brush off for my blue. That's the blue coming through. But you can see how I've got a little bit of that pink or yellow, so if you keep it on your palette, and I've kind of put a little bit back over the top of the blue there. Tea time! It's the only problem with tea is it goes cold too quick. And I like my tea hot. So, pale blue. Now there's lots of different blues. If you haven't got a light blue, just take a little tiny amount of your darker or your lightest blue. I've got I think this is cyan blue here. I'm just going to take it to the side here, and I'm going to grab some white so that I can make quite a light blue. So quite a bit of this. You can see how that works. It's about right. As I said, you can always add a bit more white in with that if you want. Vary your brush strokes so it's nice and soft. I'm not going to go into my yellow at this point. I'm going to leave it right up to the line of my colours. I suggest you do the same. See a little bit of green coming out there. So I'm going to just wash my brush off a little bit better because I don't want that yellow green coming in. If you want to use a different brush so you don't cross-contaminate, then that might be a good idea too. So just be wary of that. So I'm coming up to that line. I'm just going to grab more white on my brush now so that when I come up to this line, I'm going into the yellow, pink, but I'm going very softly with it. So it doesn't, that's not going to change a lot of colour anyway. It's when you go into the yellow and up there that it's going to change colour a little bit. So just be wary of that. And if it does turn green, we can always go over it with another colour once it's dry, so don't worry about that too much. Now I'm just grabbing the white again and I'm just bringing that a little bit down there, up there. So I think I've managed to avoid green in some way or another. See, that one there kind of looks like the sun is up there and it's trying to come through the clouds. So if you wanted to bring your yellow more down at an angle or a stronger yellow coming out the top of those clouds, you can do that. Like about, here if you wanted it a little bit more yellow. And then you can bring that yellow further down here. And you can even have a ray or two if you wish. There's like a ray of, just a soft ray coming out from that cloud. You don't have to do much, it's just if you want to. Right, so still got glue on my brush, so be careful on that one. I have to switch my brushes at this point. It's always a good idea also to keep some wet wipes handy in case you have a mishap, paint yourself. Of course, I am wearing a apron, which is also a very good idea. You don't want to make, or some old clothes or an old shirt, because you don't want to dirty up your clothes. Good clothes, anyway. I've done that before. At an event, I had a nice new black long sleeve blouse, shirt, whatever. And at an event, they just painted the walls in the room we were in. And they said, be careful of the painted walls. And of course, as I'm setting up, I completely forget and lean on a wall. And I had white paint all up my sleeve. So, yeah. I'm just going to soften that a little bit more. Titivate, as I call it. Okay, I think that's good enough, though. A little bit of a ray coming down there on mine. Okay, so we are going to do some background trees in a very, very subtle colour. So here I've got kind of bluish, greenish, purplish. I'm going to take a smaller brush for that, so I suggest you get a smaller one. Small angle brush is probably a good one. When you clean your brush, don't forget to give it a good old wash off and then dry it off. You can, and I always try and bring my brush bristles together. So I'm going to grab a, I think I'm actually going to try my filbert, which is a small round one. It's quite a small round one, this one, but you can use any one you like. If you want to use a small round one like this, you can, or the smaller angled one might work, but because we're working on quite a small basis, you don't want a big brush for sure. Okay, so I'm going to actually, the blue that I've got there is quite a subtle blue. I'm going to try that out. I may need a little slight bit of darkness in there, so just don't want to go too dark. So I'm going to try it out. Maybe a tiny touch of blue in with it, because I still want it fairly pastel, if you want to call it that. So I'm going to put some soft trees in the background. So first of all, I'm just going to draw a line down to the edge where I'm going. And then, not quite at the top, I'm going to sort of do a zigzag effect. I do need a bit more white on mine, so I'm going to grab a bit more white in the tone. And you can just make sure your paint's dry underneath before you do that. It doesn't matter if you fill this in a little bit in the middle. You can soften it out as you wish. You can bring your branches down a little bit at the sides at an angle if you wish. I always say as you wish. It's one of my... Gotta stop using as you wish. As you wish. I'm going to overlay another one in front of this one anyway, so just quite subtle that one in the background. I'm just going to bring it off the edge a little bit. Might use a similar tone next to it, or if you want to add a little tiny bit of yellow and make it touch of green, you can do. And again, sizes of trees is entirely up to you. If you want to make a bigger one, smaller one, whatever. But again, they are quite subtle in the background, so just make sure you've got enough white. Again, you can either make just the straight bits so you can come out like this from the middle, overlap those. Very subtle. Or you can do what I said and do a zigzag. Just make sure that when you get to the bottom, it's a little bit wider than the top. Obviously, the top's quite a bit wider than that. So, just filling that in. I'm filling that in right to the bottom again, because it's more dense at the bottom of the tree. Just getting the paint off my brush there. More dense in the middle than it is at the sides. I'm going to go slightly darker in this one because the sort of the sunlight's maybe making it a little bit brighter. So I'm adding a little bit of green, touch of green to that one. Try out your colours, you know, with a little touch first on the canvas. If you find it's too dark, you can always put a bit more white in with it. So this one's got a greener look to it. So again, I'm coming down to here, and again you can either do the zigzag like this and then just fill it in. Lots of different ways you can do these trees, and then I kind of like fill it in a bit like that afterwards. It's just to get the movement, I guess you could say, of the tree. I'm going to try and marry these sort of together a little bit in the background, so I'm bringing them together at the bottom there. And then again, I've got sort of a subtle purpley one in the background there. I'm going to have to wash my brush off for that one because I've got too much green on it. So again, give it a good wash. If you want a very, very pale purple, you just get a tiny, tiny amount of that pale blue. Again, take it to one side. It's a tiny amount of that pale blue, and add a tiniest amount of red to make a subtle sort of violet colour. Again, I'm going to try it on once I've got it made just to see how that looks. 'Cause I'm going to make this one a smaller one in the background here. See how that's come out sort of a purplish tone. Again, I'm just going to zigzag this. I'm just going to fill it in at the bottom, like so. These ones might be a little darker than that one, but I can always add a touch of white if I want to make them a bit more subtle. And again, if you want to put more trees in the background, you can. I've only got 4 in this one, but this is a bigger canvas, so I think I'm going to leave a space and then I'm going to put another one in the background there. And I think I might just use a similar tone. Sun's coming in a bit more, so I'm going to make slightly darker lilac, I think, with the red and the blue and the white. Not too much, but you know, try it out and see how it goes for you. I might just add sort of slightly taller one here. Again, you can either zigzag like this and try and vary your sizes each side until you get to the bottom, then you can make it thicker. So many different ways you can do these trees, and they all look effective. I've got a lovely painter actually called Golden Lake. I was doing for a private birthday party, but it's not happening until next year, sadly now, but we'll do it for a 41st birthday instead of the 40th. But yeah, it's a really lovely painting. And so hopefully I can bring that to everybody someday. Alright, so that one's, again, a bit soft in the background there. It's worked out well. And then, of course, I've got some in the forefront that are standing out a bit more. So for those ones, you've got to make sure those are dry before you put those in. So obviously I'll start at this end. It does dry very quickly. I'm going to get a different kind of green. Use whatever brush you wish for these. Smaller one might be easier for you. I don't know. I'm going to continue with my small round filbert, but if you find a smaller round brush works for you, like one like this, then go ahead and use that. Now green, I'm going to make this subtle. I don't want it too bright. So I'm going to mix a slight amount of blue with it. And a very tiny amount of red. I don't want it too dark, but I'm going to keep experimenting until I get to a colour I like. So a little bit of red will make it a dark green. That is dark, but I'm not sure if it's too dark. So tiny bit of white in with it will still make it slightly misty, or seem misty. So even if you've made a dark green, just put a little bit of white in them. We'll see how this goes anyway. So you don't have to do them exactly in front of each tree. Try and straddle them a bit or angle them a bit. I'm going to just put this one over here. I'm just going to first of all do the stem. This brush is loading up with paint. I'm going to see how I can, again, do a little bit of a zigzag. Okay. You can bring that out. This one's a different tone, of course. That's more of a petrol blue. And this one's more of a greenish green. Petrol blue, if you want to put a bit more blue in with it, you'll get to more of a petrol blue. That's whatever you like, really, but you can always change colours. It's not, you know, you can go over any colour once it's dry and to your desired colour. I'm just putting a bit more blue in with this and make it a little bit. So if you want to show more of the, so let's say if you've got green at the background, if you picked a bit more blue up and you want to show some of the branches a bit, you can just top it off with a little bit of that blue and you'll be able to see some of the detail of the branches a bit more. So yeah, I haven't gone straight across like this one, but okay. I've got another green one over here. So you see I've got kind of a purpley tone in there and a green one over here. So I'm going to put another green one maybe sort of somewhere over there. And you can vary the types, the colours of green. If you want to make it more of a yellowish green, just remember to put a tiny amount of, or put a tiny amount of red in and then white. So what that does, the red, is it sort of darkens it off a little bit. But then of course the white will give it a different tone completely. I'm just wiping that. Got so much paint on there. So I'm going to try that one. And I'm going to try this one sort of offset a little bit from there into this middle section. And, I don't start right at the top because obviously the tip is at the top, but again, if you wanted to angle it from side to side like so, you can. I'm sort of wiggling this brush a little bit because I don't want too much of the line showing, and it's still a little bit wet, so I just wanted to go over it a little bit there. With all these colours, it's certainly in a land bar away. Mystical meadow. Mystical sheep. So I'm going to do the similar thing with that, is where I'm going to pick up a bit more blue and I'm going to put it into my green so that I've got a slight tone. I'm just going to put some, you can put these at different angles, either straight forward or side at the sides. I'm only putting a subtle amount on there so they show up a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to go to a purple, and again, making the purple would be the red and the blue and a little bit of white. I do have a lilac somewhere, but I'm not going to do that to you because if you don't have a lilac, you're not going to know how to do it. So this is just cyan blue. I'm going to take it to the side. I'm going to make it quite dark to begin with. Sometimes you have to just work the amounts until you get it right. I'm going to grab some white. I want to see where that's got to. I'm still quite blue. So I'm going to just grab a touch more red. I'm getting to a slightly darker tone there. As you can see, this is quite a bit darker than that, so I'm going to a bit more white in there. Right. So I'm gonna, I might just mark this one somewhere about here. I'm going to actually get a bit more white first of all, because I want my background to be a little bit more mistier, and then I'm going to go over with a bit of dark afterwards. So, oops. Put some highlights on the top of. Come right down. You don't want to see your stem, so just come right down. Oops, come down a bit too far on mine. And then, so what I'm going to do is go back in and put a little bit of darker tone in on top, just to highlight some of the, again, branches a little bit like this. Just dab a little bit here and there on the top. Try not to put my elbow in it, which is what I'm doing. Slightly different to that one, but you know. Try not to do the same things twice, but okay. And then I got another tiny one just there. So I'm going to stick another one there. That one's smaller, so if you need to use a smaller brush, I would suggest you do so. Again, that one's start with a sort of lighter tone by putting a bit more white in. You can move it anywhere you want. If you want to put it over here, you can. I'm just going to keep it in this area here, because that one's slightly set back from that one. Just cleaned off my brush a bit so that I can get a smaller stem. You can show your stem trunk. You can show your trunk of your tree a little bit if you want to. I'm just doing this in the same tone. Maybe this is a skinnier, more sparse one. Like that. I'm kind of happy with that. That's worked out all right. Green is a little bit dodgy at the top here, but I can go back and fix that at any stage if I want to. Yeah, that's all right. I'm all right with that. Because this is a bigger canvas, I might just place another tiny one here, just because I want to. I might get a little bit more white on that one and just soften it up a bit, because I did put quite a bit down. Whoops, maybe not that much. As I tell everybody, you know, there's no mistakes in art. It's just whether you like something or not. So it doesn't have to be like mine. And again, if it's something you don't like and you want to change it, the good thing about acrylic is it's quite easy to go over and also dries quickly. Whereas if you're using oils, they take hours to dry, so it's not always easy. You've got to be very patient. Okay, so I'm going to dry my brush off. I'm just going back into my green a little bit, if I can find it back again, just to soften that top up there, because I don't like that. I don't like the top very much. I'm just going to, it's kind of a green blue, softened it down a bit, put a bit more white in there to just make it a little bit more misty. So if you want to do the same thing on yours, you can always just grab a bit more white and give it a more misty background look. Same with any of these colours, you can do that with. Okay, next step, we are going to the grass. I've got some cold tea now. but I'm thirsty and it still tastes good. Good old Yorkshire tea. It's my favourite. Okay, so far so good, girls and boys and ladies and gentlemen. And any sheep that are out there painting with me today. Alright, I know. That's going a bit too far, right? Okay, any brush will do for this. I might stick with my small round brush, but you know, anything will do. We're going to sort of work some green down. I'm going to start with a little bit of darker green coming into a lighter green, and I'm going to get a little bit golden here in the background as well. So, I've got quite a large amount of green still here. Find space, you can put it with your other green if you want to. It does dry out quite quickly, so if you've got to spritz a bottle of water and you just give it a little spritz, it'll loosen it up a bit. So this is quite a minty green, I want to call it. So to make it a little bit darker again, I'm just putting a touch, very small touch of red in with it, and that will just take off that mintiness, if you like. I might just also put a little bit of white in with it because I don't want it to be too strong of a colour because it's still out there with these. Let me touch it on. That's about right. So I'm going to come right. I don't want to leave any whiteness of canvas, so I'm going to come all along that edge there, like so. And you can bring some of that. I don't have a lot. I didn't make a lot, so it's quite light mine. So I'm just going to bring a little bit of that down, like that. And I'm going to use the side of my brush because I don't like brush strokes too much. So I'm just going to soften that, and also, you know, if you need to go over it with another coat, so to speak, you can. But you can leave these edges loose, like that, with a dry edge, because it then marries the two colours a lot better. And then we're going to just stick a little bit of yellow in that. Just a little bit, so I've just dragged a little bit of yellow over. And now I'm just going to go on the edge, basically marrying up the two colours. So you're still wet with that other colour, so that way it's easier to blend it in when you've still got it wet. But just go back over the line and down a bit like that. I'm going to do a similar thing. I'm going to grab a bit more yellow. I might grab a little bit of white in with this just to tone it down a little bit, like so. And then again, this way you can get a little bit more happy with it. I know you're all itching to. So if you're getting too many lines, use the back of your brush or side of your brush just to soften it. You don't have to press hard, just to soften it up and make sure it's blended well. But also, you don't want to see the white canvas underneath. So, all right, a bit more yellow again, going a bit lighter, a bit more white in there. Bring that right down. Of course, using a smaller brush does take longer to cover. That's the only bad thing about a smaller brush. But so I've gotten quite a lighter green over here. And I want to make sure that's covered well. I'm just getting the rest of that excess off my brush. It doesn't matter if you get some of the other green coming off too. That's absolutely fine. And a little bit more. So a little bit more yellow, red. So a little bit more yellow in with your green and a touch of white. And you're getting there. You don't want it too bright though. That's why I said if you add the white, it sort of gives it a slightly softer tone. You can see I've got sort of yellow right at the edge here. So if you grab some yellow as you're getting to the edge with a little bit of white, I'll really lighten that out as it comes into that area there. But, I'll just bring that down a little bit more. All my paint off. Right, so I'm going to wash that off. You can either use this brush or another one, as long as you've washed off good. I'm going to get a little bit of golden tone going in here. So I'm going to make sure I've got no green left on there and get some clean yellow to one side. Tiny bit of red. If I can get some. Dried off a bit too quick. Come on. So it goes a little bit orange. And then I'm going to grab whatever white I've got left. And then I'm going to, again, I am going to straddle my edge. It will bring some of that green back in, but that's okay. We're going to use some of that in that direction anyway. So if you want to put another coat on here and there, you can. I might just dabble a little bit more yellowish green, sort of, you know, where maybe there's a dip in the meadow a bit. I just put too much red back in there. So you can go back over that edge if you want to with the darker tone. Just don't forget what colours you use. A little bit of green with a tiny bit of red in there. Mine's a little bit different, but I'm just going over that edge, which is dry, fortunately now, and making sure I don't see the back of my canvas. And as I said, just to make it look like there's sort of a different tone in there. You do have to be careful. If this is still wet and you're trying to blend it, it might pull the paint off. So it's either best to wait for it to dry or work with it while it's still wet. So just go over it gingerly, I would say. And it should work. Back in there a little bit. Just a little bit more blue in that top part with my greens. So I'm just going back to the very top there with a little bit of blue green tone. I kind of like that one right on the top there, just a little bit. Okay. Alright, so now we're going to finish with a sheep at the end, just FYI. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up from the bottom with a grass effect. Now, as you can see, I've got all the different colours in here. I've got some greens, and then on the top I've sort of put some light greens, I've put some yellowish greens, I've put a bit of blue, and I've put a bit of red. I really like that, but you know, this is, maybe you don't, I don't know. But first, before I do that, I'm going to start with this sort of golden colour. So again, if you've got a clean brush, or wash that brush off really well, which I need to get some more paper because I have to get right up into the end of your brush here because it will sit up there. If your water's too dirty, go grab a quick pot of water. You can always pause me at any time and go grab one, catch up. I think that's pretty clean. Okay, so what I was trying to make before, I'm going to try again. I've got to be careful because I've got some green with my yellow there. Is grab a little bit of yellow, so it's more like a golden yellow tone. Bit of mood music. Forgot about that. So I'll put a little bit of tiny bit of white in with that as well. See how it works. It doesn't matter how much you do, just whatever you like really. So I'm going to come up and down on that motion just to bring what it looks like is, I think I need a little bit more paint, so let me grab a little bit more white into that, and a little tiny bit more yellow. go too far like this, don't worry about it. Just take a different bit to the side. Don't use it if it's gone to the point you can't do anything with it. You can either take it to the side like that. See where I've gone a peachy tone now, and grab more yellow to bring it back, or just start again, basically. Try again. It's a bit more orangey tone now. Just using my a small brush. If you use it in an up and down motion like this, doesn't matter about down here because we're not going to cover that bit anyway. But just as long as you cover your line that you've made there. You can go different angles as well. Crossways, short, long. This is quite a thick brush, so it's not actually giving me fine lines. But if I really press my brush into the canvas, both sides, it'll get thinner, so I can get more of a line like this. But that's not necessary, so I'm just going to do a mixture of both. I'll use it on its side at some point and not on another. I'm going to grab a bit more white and yellow to the side too, because I just want a bit more of a yellow, light yellow glow in the background. So I'm just adding a bit of that back in there. Of course, make sure your green is completely dry before you do that. Come right up to my end here. I'm just going to fill that bit in for now. Just make sure you can't see the line through. If you can, we'll probably go over it a few more times. I can still see a little bit of mine, so what I'm going to do in a minute is I'm just going to show you how to layer the tones of colour. I've just picked up a slightly darker tone there. So I'm going to leave that, I think, at that level, like that, for now. You don't want to see too many lines. You can always flatten your brush like this on there. We're only going to see partial amounts of that anyway. But once it dries off, if you grab some white and some yellow to the side, you can break up your tones a little bit. And just bring a few. This is still wet, so it's actually blending a little bit, but you can always break it up like that afterwards or not at all. As I said. I'll probably go back in afterwards and do that because it's still a bit wet. I'll drink my cold tea in the meantime. Yes. Or if you do want to, if you like a bit of brown in there, you can put a bit more red. Now to make brown, it can be a bit tricky, but if you actually have a little tiny bit of blue with the yellow and the red, you can come to a brown, but it is copious amounts of each to find it. So there you go. Can you see that? So a tiny bit of blue in with your red and yellow will give you some sort of browny, golden, I don't know what, I don't even know what colour to call that actually, but see how that breaks up that tone there. I'm just going to put a few little bits here and there. I'm not going to overdo it, but it's getting dry, so it will actually, I'll just show you it on here, see how I'll come to that. I'll put very, very minuscule amount of that blue in there. So break that up a little bit. Also, because I don't want to see that line, so I'm just, again, you can push some darker bits in like this, rather than the base if you want to. You are going to lose some of that base anyway, so Okay, now we're going to go back to green. We're going to get quite dark with this green. So to get quite dark, there's a few ways you can do this. I'm going to put a little bit of light green in first for the background. So I'm just grabbing a little bit of yellow and a little bit of green, just very lightly again, with a little bit of white, because I want some of that sort of pulling through here and there. So I'm just putting a small amount of that just in places, randomly basically. Okay. That's fine. I don't need much, just a little bit, because I'm going to leave a little bit of that showing through before I put the darker green up. So let me just wash that off. We will have to wait for this to dry before we can really go over it well. So have a drink, cup of tea, glass of wine, whatever you have. We'll be fine. Oh, I'm a poet too! What a silly girl, I know. All right. I've actually got a fan on in here, so this is dry really quite quickly. So I'm gonna run with it. So I'm gonna grab some green again to the side. Now, if you want to make a very dark green, you could add a tiny touch of black, but you want to be careful with that. So you see how it gets to quite a dark tone green. So that is one way you can get to it. Or you can add a little bit of red again to the green, and that will be a slightly different tone of green. So again, I'm going to be careful the way I'm doing this. I'm going to just bring some of that up to and overlapping my orange. You can do this in a thin way or a thick way to begin with, and then go over it with smaller strokes afterwards, so you can make a base colour first before you do the actual strokes, which I'm going to do a little bit. I'm coming from the bottom. Just make sure you've got enough paint made up to do that. I'm not going to go too, if I'm going to go up into the green, I am going to do more of a thinner stroke with the side of my brush. So, and don't forget to angle your grass in different directions, not all in one direction, but also make sure you don't leave any white showing through. So I'm going to leave a little bit of that green showing through, light green in the background, but not much. I just wanted a touch of it showing, a bit like that, see? Is there a reason for that? Well, it's, you know, it's art and it looks good. I don't want to get too technical because, you know, this is a fun art project. And I'll leave the technical stuff to other people. So that's where I'm going to go along with my green all the way to the end, and then I'm going to start adding different elements on top of that. So a little bit darker on there because I lost a bit of my darkness. See, I've lost almost all that piece of yellow, but it doesn't matter. That's what I'm aiming for, really. You know, like if you, maybe the wind's been blowing it that way, so you can angle some over that way. But enough paint is always key to get the coverage that you want. Try not to leave the yellow right at the bottom. In fact, I've lost that one completely, but that's okay. I don't mind. So I'm pressing harder at the bottom to get all the paint off my brush. Do want the background a bit darker before I put the light layers on, so I'm putting a bit more black in with those. So far so good. Hope you're all doing okay. If you've got any comments, please use the comments at the bottom. Love to know what you think about today's painting. And if you've never tried Yorkshire tea, wherever you're from in the world, you must. It's the only tea out there that tastes good, in my opinion. That's English breakfast tea, of course. There's different teas. Do like green kombucha. That's a good tea. Never had that one before. Seek it out. Right, when I get to this bit here, I'm just going to put a little bit of that in there at the very end. Again, if you need another layer because yours is like see-through or light, then you can get to work on that. This end should be dry by the time you get to this end if you're going as slow as I am, but I'm going slower, of course, so everybody can catch up. I mean, I do tend to work quite quickly. I'm a bit haphazard sometimes, but here I'm just going to do some smaller. A bit more black in with that one. You can do the odd bit sticking up if you want to, a bit higher, or I don't want it all the same. And I'm just getting a bit more of that darker back on there because it's denser, obviously, in the foreground here. Okay, that looks alright. So now I'm going to just add some different elements of colour just on top because, you know, why not? Although I will probably have to wait for this to mainly dry because I won't be able to see it. So I'll have another sip of cold Yorkshire tea, which is now finished, so you're probably happy about that. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit of blue to the side. I've not washed my brush off because it doesn't matter if there's a little bit of green blue on there. So I've just got a little bit of blue to the side. So I want it reasonably dark still. I don't want it too bright. I'm going to just add a touch of blue in here and there. See, that's not showing up, so I do need a little bit of white, I think, in with that as well for it to show up. Let's have a look. That's okay. See, I'm still wet in places, but I'm going to try and, wherever I'm dry, I'm just going to flick a few blue bits up here and there. In my nice multicoloured painting. Just put some bits in here and there. Not too much, but and then, as I said, I've got a little bit of dark red in there. I'm going to wash my brush off. Basically, it's red, again with a little bit of blue in. More like a purpley blue, I guess, or purpley red. So I've just a little bit of red, blue. See, I've got sort of purpley red going on there. And I've just put a bit of that in there, here and there. Again, if you add a little bit of white to it, it covers a lot better. So it's up to you. You can have different shades. So don't worry if you've got one and you're like, oh, I'm not sure about that one, and then you add another one and then it's just a different tone. That's okay. I'm not going to have too much of this. Just a touch here and there. A bit right at the bottom. That's a bit denser. More dense. Denser. Not sure if that's the right word, but if you want to correct me, you can. And then I'm going to grab a little bit more white, because I like to put some highlights on. I haven't washed my brush up, I'm just using whatever's on there. So I'm just doing a little cross hatch being like that. Or you can do directional ones. You can do it in green. I know I've got pink on mine, but if you want to pick up green, so that tone, then just put a bit of white in with your green, light green, to make it sort of a whitish green. And then what that does is it just breaks up again what's going on there. I've got any green left, let me see. Oh, there you go. It's kind of more a whitish green now. So I just put a little bit of that in the top where the lights may be shining at the top end of it. Alright, I think we're done with that one. Voila! Perfect! Whoops! Oh! Now look what I've done. Yes, I've tried to wash my brush off in my teacup. I'm so pleased I'm finished. Okay, so now we're getting down to the sheep. You should have some nice dry grass here for the sheep to be painted in. Now I'm going to use a very small detail brush for this. I'm going to use this one first. You just need white to begin with. And we're going to make just a round blob. I'm going to put mine right here. So let's just make an oval, not round actually. An oval shape. Just completely white. So we're going to have to go over this probably a couple of times. As you'll see your brush strokes, if white doesn't cover immediately very well over, but it's not too bad. If you want your buddy close as this one, you can put another one overlapping. He's obviously friends with this guy. Got something going on. If you don't like this poor little guy there's feeling a bit left out, if you don't want him by himself, you could put another one next to him. I think I might actually. I'm going to just do, again, an oval shape on its side this time for ease of. And he's kind of like half looking back at them going, what are you doing, you know? So I might give him a friend sort of facing though, because it's much easier to do these facing. So don't forget he's a little bit smaller because he's in the distance. So I'm going to do another one. Just here. I like to do mine in odd numbers, so I've got 4, which is not an odd number as I think I remember that when I was at school. But so I may just put another one in here as well, just a little bit further up. He's a little bit smaller again. He's right in the back. Right, so I'm going over that. See, it dries quite quick, so I've been able to go over that again with the flat end of my brush just to cover a bit better. Just don't want to see the green through, that's for sure. Okay, so there's the basic shapes. Yay! Now you will need a finer brush for the rest. So I'm going to my 0 brush, which is a really fine, small detail brush. If you don't have one, you can work with the one which is a number, what did I say? Number 4. But you'll have to make sure you get the tip quite straight and neat by just bringing it together before you put it in your paint. So I'm going to grab my black, it hasn't dried out. So with my black again, because the smaller brushes don't hold the paint, so I'm just rolling my brush with a bit of water and paint in it, so I've got a nice fine point. It's sometimes best for, make sure this is dry before you lean on it as well. I think mine's pretty much dry. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to outline, and it doesn't have to be perfectly straight because he's got a woolly a woolly coat, so if it's a bit wiggly, that's fine. And this one's overlapping, so I'm going to just do this overlap first. He's really cozy with this guy. Don't forget to go back into that. And coming up to there. You can bring this all the way around at the bottom. Don't forget to grab some water and some more paint if you get them dry. Same with this, you can bring it all the way around, like so. We'll do these ones first. Actually, no, you know what we won't. We'll outline these because we can wait then for that to dry a little bit. So let's outline. Now this one I'm only outlining a teeny tiny amount at the top. Very tiny amount there. A bit more underneath because of course it's darker and the tone's a bit darker underneath. Like that. Again, I'm leaving his head part free. And then I'll do the same with this guy here. And this one too. Okay, so let's just outline them. So now, I think that's still wet. So I'm going to start with the legs as this is wet. So I'm going to start with the back leg. So the back leg is actually coming out slightly from the side like this and coming down. So it's sort of at an angle. So it's a little bit wider at the top than it is at the bottom. And you bring the little leg down like that. I forgot to bring my glasses in here with me, so I'm going to have to hope that I can see what I'm doing. So you don't have to really put a foot on it because he's kind of in the grass a little bit, you know, but you can bring it out slightly at the bottom if you want to. He's kind of got a fat leg there, hasn't he? And then same thing again, just where that one is starting, we're going to come down a bit longer obviously because the front legs are wider, or in the forefront I should say. Which is a bit thinner at the bottom as well. Skinny ankle, this one's got a bit of a fatter one. And then on the other side, again, we're making it slightly, a bit more water, a bit more paint, slightly thicker at the top, or I should say at an angle, and then thinner of course as it goes down. I'll make the legs the same length at the front. Okay, a bit more paint. Same here with this guy. You can't see the one in the background, so don't worry about the fourth leg. Yes, it's a three-legged. If you want to, you can. I've got 4 legs on this one, but this one, you know, it's kind of like behind that one at the front, but it's up to you if you want to put another one in. But I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to come out from the side, make this leg shorter, like that, and then again make this one longer. It's quite annoying when you don't get much paint on this one. This one I've got coming over a bit wider actually. It's got his legs further apart. So with that one, I'm going to put the leg somewhere in the background, about there. Trying to make it the same length. It's about right. Okay. Now, as long as this is dry at the top, I can put his head in now as well, or her. No discrimination. Okay, so we're just going to put a sort of a round shape like that, with his ears coming out at the side. It like that. I'm going to paint all that in black. You can bring his chin to a point a little bit more if you wish, but or a thinner point, I should say, like that. You can put his angle on the side if you don't want it straight, or you can put it the same. The brush is beginning to misbehave. It's like if I found I wanted this one to sort of come slightly at an angle, I can have his coming like that. It's got to be the head. So he's got a slight angle to his. Right, so I'm going to leave that one for now, before we do the, and then we're going to, this one's kind of looking back, but you don't have to have him looking back, but it might be easier to have him looking back than it is, so what I'm going to do is, he's not sticking his chin out so much on this one as that one is, but that's okay. Back legs, again, just because it's in the background a bit more, just make them reasonably thin. You don't want them too thick. Just make them the same length. And of course, this is not coming too far up here. It's coming in a bit from the neck. And of course, a bit smaller at the back there. So can't see his feet because it's in the grass, and that's where we're going to put a little bit more of a shadow in underneath there. Okay, lovely. Because I haven't done these two, I'll make them a little bit smaller. It's up to you if you want to start with the head or you want to start with the feet. So the head is coming down from, you don't put your head sticking on the top of your sheep. It's halfway down, as you can see. Certainly doesn't have a neck like that. I'll do this one as well. The brush is getting harder to work with because it's getting dry. Gave him a bit of a bigger head, but that's okay. I think I'm only going to do the front two on these ones because those ones behind too far in the distance and you can't see them. So I'm just going to do the front two coming in very small, don't forget, in the background. Made him a bit thick. Perfect. Lovely. So the last thing to do, well, not the last thing, we're going to put a bit of shade underneath, but if this black's already dry, what we can do is, I'm going to get a bit of grey rather than white, so I'm going to get some white and some black to make a little bit of grey to the side, like so. But I want it stark white, so I'm just going to get a point on that small brush, best I can, roll it in there, and then I'm going to just do a little. Don't forget this one's on its side a bit more, just give them some. You can put that in there like that if you want. Not sure about that. I think just the eyes is fine. I might have to go over mine a little bit. Like so, in the background, all these very tiny eyes there and here. You really can't see them, so you can just put in whatever you wish on that. It doesn't have to show really. Alright, so a bit more, keep with the grey theme, and right underneath, let's just give it a touch of grey, because of course it's darker underneath. So let's just give it a little touch of grey, sort of round the bottom part. very small amount, and just do it in sort of side to side, sort of circly motions like that. Okay, so that just takes off brightness, and the same in the background here, or just underneath the side, just a little bit grey, very light grey, not dark, very light. He needs a bit more white, really. Okay, and because they don't look like they're anchored, they look like they're floating, don't they? So we have to give them some shadow underneath. I'm going to use my middle round brush, which is number 4. And I'm going to grab, so what we need here is a very subtle amount of slightly darker green. So if you can make it to the side, again, I'm getting quite messy here. I've lost my yellow, so I do need a slight amount of yellow on my green. Just a little bit. So I don't want to make it too green, yellowish either. So this is where you just have to experiment a little bit and see what colour it looks like. So to anchor them, we're going to give them a shadow. So depending on where you want, the shadow to fall or the sun to fall, I'm going to just, at the front of their feet, I'm just going to sort of aim it that direction. So you can fill in a bit of green underneath the body, because that's in the shadow a bit, and right under there. And right where their feet are, you can just move it out to the side, under the body a bit, out to that side a bit if you want to. So right under the legs there, and across. Same here, we need some shadow, so let's give them some as well, right underneath the body, like that. And because we've got 2 extra sheep that snuck in there, I'm just going to give them some shadow as well, just around the area. And if you want to just put some extra bits of green in there and get it off, you can do like that as well. So you see how that anchors them a lot better, because they look like they were floating, and they needed that just little bit of anchor to land them on their feet. Ha ha ha. Ba ba ba. Ba 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 ba. Yes, it was definitely tea. Definitely tea. All right, I can like that, but if you want to keep playing and fiddle around and add more things, you can do. But that's my sheep painting for the day. Let me wash it off in the right cup this time. Put your name or your initials in the corner there. I'm going to use white today. Because it shows up, any light tone will work. Okay, all is good in the world. Wonderful, I enjoyed that one, as I try to, my own paintings. Please, if you haven't already subscribe to the channel. There should be a subscription. There's no cost for that. It just means that you get notifications of anything that's coming up when I'm doing free events, or I do sometimes, or I'm hoping to put some free little tutorials on there at some point when I get some time. Look at the website if you want to know what's coming next. What's coming next, if you're watching me live on Tuesday, is Swing, which is Tuesday, I think it's the 1st of September, which is this lovely sunset over the water and go on the swing. That's why it's called Swing. But I've also got lots of things coming up, and if you book anything by 31st of August 2020, because you might not be watching this before that date, then you do get a free event that I'm doing, which is Monet's Water Lilies. Again, you can see on my website for that information. Or just go to the Social Canvas UK on Facebook, and please show me your paintings. But I thank you again very much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye!